Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Let's just wait for a few minutes so that other participants can join and we can start. I'm going to share a poll, so you can answer the poll question, and I will share the results before we start our session. So I'm launching it now. It has a question and multiple choices where you can just choose.
Hi.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we're waiting for the other participants to join. We only have a few, but I've launched a poll for the participants to look at and they answer.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll tell you when to start.
Okay.
Of getting it, so don't tell Lewis I'm not letting him help him. I get it.
Two more minutes and then we are going to start the podcast. Catherine, you can have your video on, please. Thank you. Beatrice, you too.
Khadija, did you say something?
Sorry?
Did you say something?
No,
I stepped
yes.
away briefly.
No, I'm going to end the poll now, and then I'll let you know to start. There are some participants joining.
Shall I admit them? Or
Yes,
you
please,
have
yeah.
them?
I also have.
Okay.
So I'm going to share the results. The question was, how much do you know about inclusive education? 80% said they are conservative. The 20% little idea about it. So I'm going to share the results now. Okay. Hi, Sarah. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today on What's All About Wednesdays. We are happy and excited to have all of you here with us. My name is Khadija Fuad Ali and I'm your host this evening. I'm an ECD educator and facilitator. I'm also advocating for literacy in early years and a teacher at the Aga Khan Academy Junior School, Nairobi. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Keep your mics on mute. If you have a question, please use the chat feature to submit your question. You can submit questions at any point during the webinar. I'll bring them up during the question and answer session. You can also ask a question orally. Just use the raise hand feature during the question and answer session, and you'll be given a chance to ask a question. Also note that the webinar will be recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. Details will be shared before we end the podcast. Today's question was about inclusion in education, and I would like to share briefly before we start with our presenter. So inclusion in education refers to all students being able to access and gain equal opportunities to education and learning. It arose in the context of special education with an individualized education program. We as teachers, we call it IEP, short form of individualized education program. And is built on the notion that it is more effective for students with special needs to have said mixed experience, for them to be more successful in social interactions, leading to further success in life. Kurasa is the one hosting us, and it is an education innovation, bringing educators together from all walks of life. Kurasa has been very kind to us educators by giving us this platform to learn from each other and channel our voices on education matters. Kurasa is an innovative Kenyan-based edtech solution that's supporting teachers and schools to better execute CBC, competency-based curriculum implementation. Kurasa is currently used by 160 plus teachers across 90 plus classrooms and by over 500 parents. Today we are launching What's All About Wednesdays, edition 004, and today evening we have a wonderful lady with us, Ms Catherine Wanjiku. She is passionate about disability advocacy, inclusive design, and technology. She is the program and impact coordinator at Lugha Ishara, and today she'll be sharing who they are, what they do, and why, and the why. She'll also introduce HBCC, which stands for Home-Based Comprehensive Care. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to Ms. Catherine Wanjiku. Karibu sana, Catherine.
Asante sana.
Oh, and I forgot
Thank
to
you.
mention, Catherine, that Catherine and I are in the same fellowship program where we have been selected to reimagine education in Kenya, and we're in the same thematic unit under ECD, Early Childhood Development. Karibu sana, Catherine.
Asante sana, Khadija. Thanks for having me. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'll just like, before we start, let you know that our team leader from Lugha Ishara is here with us, Nancy. So if you see her among the participants, that's her.
I've seen her.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much for inviting me over to Kurasa. I'm really excited to come talk about something that I'm passionate about, which is disability inclusion, deafness, in deaf children, and just basically the ecosystem that surrounds a deaf child. So yeah, that's something that I'm very passionate about, and I think we'll just dig into the PPT if you don't mind sharing that for us.
Okay.
Yeah. But before we go fast, I don't know, maybe we could watch a video. Did you get my video?
Yes, let me share the video.
Yeah, let's share the video first so that it sets the foundation for what we are going to talk about today. Hi, Beatrice. Good to see you.
Hi, Catherine. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm good.
Can you see my screen, Catherine? Can you see my screen? I'm going to start share. I'm going to start with the sound and then. Are you able to hear?
Yes, we can see, we can hear. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Please check if there are people waiting to be admitted. I think I got a notification. Yeah.
Oh.
So thanks for sharing the video. That's basically language deprivation, or the journey that a parent who has a deaf child goes through, by and large. So the greatest challenge or problem that faces a deaf child is language deprivation, because then they're not exposed to language at the early age or the formative years of 0 to 5. And this is an irreversible process. One doctor, and I think before I go there, I was watching that video, and it always makes me emotional because it represents the journey that I took. And I remember, there's a part in the video where she says she's not responding. And so those are words I've said myself when I was with my son, because my son is deaf, he's 9 years old. And I remember the thing that prompted me to actually go to hospital is when he didn't respond to a rattle. That's when I knew for sure then something is wrong, because I shook a rattle. I gave him a rattle one time when he was around 9 months old, and he didn't respond to it. He just looked at it. He didn't shake it. He didn't take to it. And for sure, I had suspected for a while that something was wrong. But then that one rattle, when he didn't respond to the rattle in particular, that's when I knew we really need to go get checked in the hospital. So then after that, we did go through the test, and it is a similar journey to the family Mama Zawadi in the animation that we saw. So the greatest challenge that we at Lugha Ishara, or that we are tackling, the problem that it is we are tackling at the base of our problem is language deprivation, because it has long-lasting effects, and it's very hard at the beginning to point out to a parent or to see what effects language deprivation has. But we've seen it affects the brain, it affects socio-emotional skills, some skills that once compounded really deprive a child of so much. And it's something that can be helped, it's something that can be stopped. So let's dig into Lugha Ishara, why we do it, the how, the why. Yeah.
Okay, let me share screen.
Okay. So next slide, please. Yeah, so at Lugha Ishara, what we are a social innovation that is at the nexus of disability, technology, and education. So what we're trying to do is support the child, the ecosystem within the child, because the child will go to school, the child will go to church, the child will go to hospital. And so if these spaces are not inclusive, then the child is left behind, or the family is excluded, or basically trying to create an ecosystem within which an ecosystem that surrounds the child that is inclusive. So this is something we have proven over time that indeed the products that we are offering are products that are needed and products that work. So it's something that we have been in existence since 2019, and actually the cohort that joined us in, I think, is it 2018 or 2019, are actually graduating to another, or can I say graduating year? They've been with us for so long, we've seen them transition and grow, and we were speaking to the parents in a survey, and now they were saying it's time. One of the sentiments that came through a lot was, now it's time to move on to the next phase of their lives, which means that they have seen some growth with the children, and now they are feeling they are ready for the next phase of their children. These are children who joined us. One of the youngest children we had was 2 years old. And it's a dynamic class, if I may call it. So we have hearing and we have deaf children, but specifically we deal for example, a lot of the hearing children are siblings of the deaf children. And so as they've grown, we've seen these children grow and transform and learn sign language and become such impressive little children just by enabling them and creating a space for them to learn and to lead and to thrive. Excuse me, I think this, yeah.
It's okay, go ahead. I will just invite me.
Okay.
Just join.
Yeah, okay.
Let me.
So we've been partnered with Gertrude's Children's Hospital since 2019. That's where we are based. That's where we hold our physical classes, which are every other Saturday. We've had to sort of transition out of the every Saturday model for now because, as I've said, the children have grown up and some of them have joined boarding school. So we do not have the Saturday classes, the weekly Saturday classes, but now we are matching them to the academic calendar. Yeah, so we're saying it's proven and comprehensive language development platform for families, educators, and educators of deaf children. So in Lugha Ishara, one thing we pride ourselves about is including the family, because the evidence and the research that is coming out clearly states that the best way to intervene within a family of a child who has a disability is for the family to own the agenda with which you want the child to achieve. So we are saying we include the family from the word go. So it's we individualize. Khadija has talked about individualized education program, and now we take it a step further to individualized family services, because if you work with, say, the child alone, and this is a language thing, what language does is connect people. If the child has no one to communicate with in sign language, then they'll still be isolated. So you'll have a child who is very fluent in sign language, but mom does not know sign language, daddy does not know sign language, the siblings don't know sign language. So who will this child talk to or talk with? So it's important to include the family as a whole. Next slide, please. So these are some of our champions, sign language champions. We encourage them to just be themselves and learn, lead, and thrive, not just to survive and just be, but to thrive as well. Next slide, please. This is just a glimpse into who we are as Lugha Ishara, some of our parents learning sign language. Next slide. Yeah, sorry about that. The resolution is a bit messed up, but yeah, the kids, they enjoy themselves. So this is what, just a short glimpse into who we are as what we do on a typical day at Lugha Ishara. Next slide. Yeah, the boy, I don't know if you can see clearly, the boy in the middle is my son. Yeah. So they're signing. Before you move on, previous slide. Yeah, you can see the boy on the, is it my right? On the screen, on the right hand side of the screen is signing mom. That's the sign for mom on the palm to cheek, mom. Next slide, please. Can you play that?
No, it's not playing.
Okay, so no problem. So the reason I put that video there is because some of our children, the older children, we encourage them to develop communication skills and to learn how to communicate not to learn how to communicate, but teach the others who are behind them. And so that's one of our students, teaching some of the younger children in Lugha Ishara. Next slide, please. Yeah, and we have lots of fun with the children. We celebrate birthdays in big ways. Next slide. Yeah, so what is the problem we are trying to solve? The problem, like I said, by and large, is language deprivation. But why does language deprivation occur? Why is it so prevalent? In the video, it said a lot of the parents to whom deaf children are born 95% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. So the moment a child is born to, a deaf child is born to a hearing parent, right from birth, right from the age of 0, there's language, there's a disconnect in terms of communication. Because I don't know how many of you are parents, but I'm sure each one and every one of you has interacted with a child or has seen a mom interact with a child, and they start with the babbling, the ooh, the mama, baba, you know, the way you play and make all these cooing sounds to your child. That's communication, and that's where it starts. It starts as early as in the womb, but really we want to focus at that age of birth. So when a child is born, they start developing communication with the mother outrightly, right from the time they are placed on your chest at the hospital. That's where communication starts. So you can see how much a deaf child is deprived. But then now, as the child is developing, it takes time for maybe a mom to notice, maybe in the society that we exist in, you're told, oh, boys are delayed, they will get there, just give it time. As you're giving it time, time is going, and the part of the brain that is responsible for language is shrinking. One doctor explained it to me as corruption. She said it's corruption. So she said, if you leave land in Nairobi unused for some time, somebody will come and grab it and put up their own structures, and then eventually they will start with a small shack, then made of mabati. Then they will next time they'll put some concrete, and eventually you'll find that your piece of land has been occupied. So what happens with a deaf child is the part of the brain, the auditory cortex, I believe it's called, it is not in use, and so the visual cortex that is near the auditory cortex. This is very layman language. Please don't quote me, but I'm rephrasing. I'm rephrasing what I was told by the doctor, is that the visual cortex now starts to become larger and larger, but which is not a problem. It's a great thing for the visual cortex to grow, but now it does so at the expense of the auditory cortex, which is responsible for voices and speech and hearing and all that. So you find that effect of that shrinking or that land grabbing in the brain, that is what we are saying, it shrinks, and it's irreversible, or it takes so much rigorous effort for me as a parent, now speaking from my own experiences, that it takes so much effort to teach your child, or for your child to catch up with the milestones that or where they should be. I know we say we don't compare children, but as the child grows, they need more language to be able to communicate and to express themselves. So that is how language deprivation ends up happening within a deaf child. Then we're saying so we're saying that it affects the family as well, because the child is not connected within the family. And another challenge in particular to deafness is that language is what connects us as human beings. So wherever you go, I'm not trying to minimize other disabilities, but language connects us, and that wherever you go, you need language to express yourself and to communicate with others. So you find they create a cocoon for themselves, and it sort of locks them out from enjoying life wholly, when a child is language deprived. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we're saying, what is the solution for this parent for Mama Zawadi? If you just joined us and you don't know who Mama Zawadi is, it's a video that we watched at the beginning of this session that shows the journey that a parent takes, or even myself who has gone through this journey. So what is the solution? Lugha Ishara is a language development center that is accessible. Why accessible? Accessible means, for one, that you can access it physically. I said we are located at Gertrude's Children's Hospital, and also accessible for the child in that we use the language of the child. It's affordable, and it's child-friendly. So one of the challenges or one of the pain points with sign language is that you will find a lot of sign language content online, possibly, if you go to YouTube or other platforms, but none of it is child friendly. A child will not sit there for a lot of the sign language videos I see. The signs, it's somebody telling you the sign and probably caption there. That will not get the attention of the child. So we do this in an accessible way, affordable way, and one that is child friendly. The other niche that we really like to, that we pride ourselves about, is being family centered. Because I said the child you'll come, if somebody brought their child today to, or rather on a particular Saturday, to Lugha Ishara to learn sign language, and then they pick them up later, and that family does not know sign language, then you're not really creating an ecosystem or an environment that is accessible and inclusive, because then the family is still being left out. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we are saying, what we're saying, our home-based comprehensive care that we're introducing is a case management approach to full exposure and access to the interventions for deafness and different communication pathways. So our program has been running since 2019, and we've had families that we've been working for that while, and we've seen the progress and the growth. I was saying that some of the children are actually graduating to the next phase of life, or they feel that they're now ready to tackle something else. But then for a child, what does it mean for a deaf child, to be ready for school? I said at the beginning that this child is probably has been born to, say, hearing parents. And so by the time they're getting over the shock of having a deaf child and what that means, time is moving, because in the country, unfortunately, we do not have newborn screening so that you can get this information early. One thing I want to point out, Kindly, is that a lot of deaf children, unless they have some other compounded problem or additional disability, they are of typical cognitive skills, just as any other hearing child. But then, because of the language deprivation, the brain shrinks, and you see, they are sort of delayed cognitively. They have delayed cognitive milestones. So that is caused by language deprivation. But if you intervened as early as birth, a deaf child and a hearing child of the same age, they should not have any differences in terms of their cognitive abilities. So we're saying we have had these families who joined us from different ages and from different from different places. But then some of their children, speaking on my case, who are already language deprived, who are already tackling or working on or trying to intervene on language deprivation. But what if, even Zawadi in the video, it will be the same case. I think she was 2 or 3. So it means that the formative years, those critical 0 to 2 years, she has missed out a lot. So if you want to really ensure that a deaf child is ready for school within the correct time to go to school, I think it's 3 years or 4 years, then you have to intervene very, very, very early. And the way that you're doing it at Lugha Ishara, in addition to the other products that we have, the Hangout Hub, which is the physical meeting place that we come to on Saturdays. We have the corporate clubs, which is an inclusion club for corporates that want to develop inclusion or to be inclusive in their workplaces, and also the Talent Academy, where we now harness the talents and grow the talents of the deaf children. So in addition to that, we realized then, to prepare a deaf child to be ready for school, you have to intervene very early, as early as 0 years, 0 years, if that's possible. Yeah, so how we do this is by the home-based comprehensive care, which is our product. So it is a case management approach, in that each family is handled individually within their strengths to achieve outcomes that are pre-specified. So you work with the family to identify what it is, the goals, that they want to achieve for their deaf child, and you help them achieve them. So you work case by case, because each family is very dynamic. If, for example, I want to have my child who is deaf, maybe learn sign language, or I want to get hearing aids, those are the different communication pathways that we're choosing. So you could choose to be amplified, for your child to be amplified. You could choose sign language. You could choose a combination of both, which we call total communication. So depending on your family strengths and the communication pathway that you want, then we guide you and work with you to achieve those goals. Next slide, please. So the problem, that the reason why we are developing the HBCC, as I've called it, I'll use HBCC, which is home-based comprehensive care from now on. We say that because the large problem is language deprivation, but then we have problems specific to that, to deaf children. So we are saying a parent has gotten a newborn, so they have the tasks of learning how to handle a newborn and all this. And that is assuming that this is the first child for this family. If they have siblings, that means in addition to the siblings, then they have a newborn, and then this newborn has a disability, and so now they have to learn new ways of communication, and so that can become very overwhelming for parents. Then they have numerous doctor's appointments. Once you start going, for me, I remember there's the first appointment I went to where I just walked into a hospital and said, I think my child has a problem. And then the nurse will ask you questions to try and follow up. What is the problem, so that she can know where to go to send you. Then she sent me to a neurologist. The neurologist sent me to, I don't know, another type of doctor. So many doctor's appointments, which can be overwhelming. And there's a likelihood of losing parents within doctor's appointments. So once you're told, go visit Dr. ABCD, you have work, you have other children, you're maybe a wife, a daughter, you have other roles and responsibilities that you carry on. And it's so easy for parents to be lost within these doctor's appointments. Then you're saying there's an overwhelming number of records and documentation. You have to keep track of the test results. You have to take them to the next doctor. And these are burdens that are really, that can really overwhelm a parent. Then physicians are not very well, no, I know this is being recorded. Let me put this well. Physicians do not encounter deaf children on a regular basis for them to be able to keep up with the changing information and research that is coming out on deaf children. So what the home-based comprehensive care is an area for them to refer. So what are the best practices of including a family? And again, once you have a child with a disability, as you are going to these numerous doctor's appointments, the doctors are not talking to each other. So you're going to this doctor, they're telling you do this, do that. And so you're a parent, you're learning how to work with a deaf child. You probably have other children, and then you have to be the coordinator of this entire process. So it's really easy for a parent to fall off or to just feel overwhelmed. Next slide, please. So the end goal that we are trying to develop with the HBCC at Lugha Ishara is creating a holistic end-to-end. Oh, okay. I see that, Khadija, thanks. So I think I'm almost done. So it's creating a holistic end-to-end pediatric audiology center. So it's holistic in that we'll be looking at the family. So that has to do with the socio-emotional, the family, the entire ecosystem, but then all the domains of holistic development. So there's the physical, there's the cognitive, I believe. Yeah, well, all the 4 domains of holistic development that we'll be looking at, the child will be in the center of that. And so we are trying to develop a child holistically from end to end. So we will have then from the screening process, guiding the parent all the way from the screening process, working with them to the rescreening, should they need it, then to the diagnostic evaluation, and trying to guide this parent and give them as much information as as we can, all the way and then to intervention. So the actual intervention now means the different communication pathways and exposing the parents to the best practices. That's where we are saying the global standard of communication pathways. So if you choose sign language, if you choose total communication, which is a mix of talking or speech and signing, and if you choose speech as well, then that's what we are going to guide you. We guide you through. A huge premise of the HBCC, as I said, is working with the family, because it will be a family agenda, a family affair. And it will be a family agenda. You work together with the family to achieve these milestones within the holistic domains. Then, what I wanted to say was a huge part of HBCC is working with the family and information, availing all the information there is about deafness and the different communication pathways so that a parent can make an informed choice. We're also saying another premise is early intervention. So we are working very closely with Gertrudes, who will now start conducting newborn screening so that we can get to this child within 6 months. We already know what is the situation. Are they severely, do they have severe hearing loss? Do they have moderate? Where is the family at in terms of this decision? What is the ecosystem surrounding this child? And once we provide them with all the information that there is globally, whether or not that parent or that family can access that communication at that point, ours is to present that information to them and then work with the family to choose a communication pathway that is within the family strength, and then working with them through play to achieve the desired milestones that we have set with the family. So we are going to have global standard communication pathways, early intervention, and use of play.
Okay.
Next slide, please.
Well, Catherine, we can take some questions now because we only have 15 more minutes, and if you have time, we'll continue with your PowerPoint. With your presentation. Okay. I have some questions here. How does a parent decide if their child is best placed in a special school or an inclusive school?
Okay, thank you for that question. I think that is it's a decision that is made within the family or within an ecosystem. It's not a decision that you want to make alone. So for example, if a child, because we also have to take into consideration what is available within the country or within the locality, can the family be able to move to a place where they can then access the inclusive school or the special school? Does the inclusive school have the necessary infrastructure to take care of your child? Are they willing to make accommodations? And unfortunately, in the country, accommodations for children with disabilities seems like a favor. It's not a favor, it's a right. So is the inclusive school or the special school able to make accommodations for your child? So these are something that you'll weigh as a family and with the teachers as well. And one thing about that is very important is for parents to be informed of what exists. That's why we are saying provide this information to the parents so that they're able to make an informed choice and they're able to advocate for their parents, for their children from a point of information.
Okay, thank you.
I hope
yeah, and Betty Kimani says she loves the peer-to-peer teaching. Sarah is, how was it for you emotionally as a parent?
Well, it's been 9 years. I've done a lot of inner work to try and get to try and heal. But I think for me, what can I say? I was in autopilot. So get things done. What needs to be done? He needs to go for a test, go for a test. And then until one point, and I usually share this part of the story. I hope I don't get emotional. I usually share, it took me around I think 4 years. He was 4 years old when I could say that I have a deaf child. Before I would go around with using euphemisms, maybe I'll say he has hearing loss or he's hearing impaired, which is actually a word that within deaf culture that is not politically correct. So the correct word is maybe deaf with a capital D, but yeah, I'm getting lost in the details. Yeah, so for me, it was hard in hindsight, but I was in autopilot, so I was trying to get things done to get him what he needed. But it was very emotional because again, I also had, once you give the information to the parent, pale, you at the desk, and you're the doctor or the practitioner and the parent. Remember, this parent has to go back and inform the extended family. So trying to convince and advise and the extended family, that was it was a very hard process for me.
And she's also asking, how many family members do you work with per child?
Within the family, so we cannot say that we'll work with 3 or 4. So if the family is a family of 4, if you have 1 child, 2 siblings and 2 parents, those are 5 people within the family. So we work with the entire family. We really encourage dads to come on board and to work with us, because I know dads, when it comes to these matters, sometimes they are left behind, of course, within the circumstances of it and dynamics of each family. So that's different, but we really encourage and work with dads to join, and we work with the entire family, because anybody that a child exists or works with or connects with on a regular, or is in touch with on a regular basis, is somebody we work with.
And also, from Betty, why don't we have newborn screening here in Kenya? Is it a costly investment or?
No, it's actually not costly. I think it's relative. Costly is relative, but in terms of acquiring infrastructure as a government, it is not expensive. The first test that is done for newborn screening is actually a handheld device. So it's something that you can do. A nurse can do a quick 15-minute check in and out. And then that can be able to tell whether a child is a pass or a refer. Refer meaning then they need another screening just to confirm that. So it's not a capital intensive a procedure, or the equipment is not that expensive. I think, but I'm hoping that with the new policy that was passed, is it a policy or a law? The one just from the other day, where children with disabilities will get these services for free. I'm hoping that will push the government to ensure that we have newborn screening across all hospitals, so that we're able to get to the children early enough.
And another question, how do you handle children with multiple disabilities but are also deaf?
At the moment at Lugha Ishara, we don't have a child with multiple disabilities, but speaking from my own encounter with other parents who have either deaf blind children or autistic and deaf children, I think the major foundation that you need to lay is for language, because this child has to be able to express and communicate language. I know for the deaf blind, they use tactile signing. So tactile signing is when you sign on my palm. So this would be the deaf child's palm, and this would be you as a signer. So if you're signing A and B and C on the palm of the child, so I'd say the main foundation that you need to lay for any child with any disability is for their ability to communicate. If they are autistic and nonverbal and possibly deaf, I know there are communication devices which are unfortunately very expensive for people to acquire, but there are communication devices that use touch, and they are really useful to autistic nonverbal children.
And another question, how does a parent decide if their child is best placed in a special school or an inclusive school?
I think we answered that, but maybe I can just go back.
This is Betty asking. Betty Kimani is also asking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I think, like I said, there's a word I keep forgetting, that it's best, the best practice is to work with the family and the school if that is available. Sometimes schools are not very receptive. I know KISE can also help with school placement, but one thing about schooling when you have a child with a disability is that you have to inform yourself. Unfortunately, there's no place right now where you can go and get this information, because that's what early intervention centers should provide you with information. And that's why we are saying at HBCC will provide you with intervention with you right from screening all until you exit out of the HBCC and you're ready for school. So once our child is ready for school, then one way we will do that, I know, is by peer-to-peer learning, which is to introduce parents to other parents who have walked the journey before, and that parents are able to advise each other on where to be the best schools, how they are, and placement and all that. So I know a lot of connection between parents of these children with disabilities is really important, because they're able to share information that a lot of practitioners may not be able to have access to.
Okay, and another question, is this a program that can be rolled? Sorry, Isaac, you're saying something? Okay, is this a program that can be rolled out in referral hospitals to make it more accessible? This question is from Nell Njoro.
Is she referring to the HBCC or?
Nell,
yeah.
You can answer that. Is this a—
Hi. I think just the whole screening process, I think that's the most, probably feels like the major bit. Is it something that you can recommend, like, to the other hospitals where it can be accessible?
Yeah.
Or are they not,
yeah.
Or are they not open to external people offering such programs?
No, I actually think the greatest challenge is lack of information. That's why we do not have newborn screening. A lot of people do not know the effects of language deprivation and what that means. And so you find that it's not taken as seriously as other conditions, because it's, people just assume then, oh, see, then you'll go learn sign language at the age of 7 when you find out that your child is deaf. But remember, at that time, then the child has is already language deprived. So the biggest challenge, I think, is the lack of information to the right people in government to roll out newborn screening in all. It should actually be, the global standard is that every child is screened at birth. So I am hoping that then this is something that we can change at policy level to have newborn screening.
Okay, Beatrice, you could ask, okay. Beatrice, you could ask your question. Unmute, please.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
So my question is, what can we as educators, or how can we help improve deaf inclusion, or just make an impact in our spaces, even though we don't have we don't deal with children who are deaf or hard of hearing?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the question. One way to do that is to learn sign language, because one way to connect with people is to talk to them and include them. And language is the key barrier to connecting with deaf people or deaf children. So one is to learn sign language, and then once you have you've covered that aspect, it's easy then to include the deaf child, because language is their greatest barrier.
Also, I was wondering because I deal with, I'm trying to create an inclusive classroom and it's virtual. Do you think tech is something that like that can impact the deaf community, especially children, like to encourage them to be into STEM and just tap into that field? Because I was reading an article by the British Standard or something, and it was saying only 0.3% of postgraduates or undergraduates are hard of hearing or are completely deaf and they're in the STEM field. So that's a very small percentage considering how many the other larger, that's 99.7% of people in STEM. So do you think like we can include tech in education and try to include that, as well as also like I don't know what curriculum they use. Is it signed English or KSL? Is it tech friendly, like from a very from like, because you tap into interventions from a very young age and we are also evolving, so is it tech friendly, the curriculum that is, and how can we put that into how can we incorporate that into the system?
Okay, yeah, Beatrice. Wow, that's a loaded question. It's a heavy question.
Catherine,
Yeah.
10 more minutes because we have run out of time, but 10 more. I'm seeing 13 new messages. So you have so many questions, like 13 more questions. But we give 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes. 6:10 will end.
Okay, so let me try and make
part 2. We'll do part 2 next time. Okay.
Yeah, so one way now about the language, what you can do to include, okay, where do I start? Like I said, Beatrice's question is very loaded. One challenge that in Kenya that we have, why you don't see a lot of deaf and hard of hearing people in other areas except outside of education. So you find a lot of deaf and hard of hearing people, very few deaf and hard of hearing people go to university. The problem is because in deaf schools, they do not do Kiswahili, whereas Kiswahili remains an official qualification criteria. So you need to have done Kiswahili to get into university, and then to do some of the courses. Like if you want to do BCom, I'm sure you have to have had either Kiswahili or English. So some of the way the system is set up right now, that locks out a lot of deaf and hard of hearing people out of getting to university. If you want to know more about that, there's this book by Professor Ndurumo. He's a deaf professor in Kenya. He's attended very high-ranking Ivy League universities outside of the country. So one challenge you might encounter with KSL is that Kenya Sign Language, that is that it's sometimes limited in vocabulary, especially for STEM. And one way you can overcome that is by learning ASL, American Sign Language. BSL, British Sign Language, is quite different from Kenya Sign Language. ASL has a closer relationship to KSL, and it's actually Kenya Sign Language has heavily borrowed from American Sign Language. So in the areas where you do not find STEM related signs for your program in STEM, then it's you can always fall back on ASL. I'll highly encourage you. I think STEM is an area that they can pursue. Particularly, I'll speak from experience of my son. He's very particular with things and he likes to nitpick, and he has got a lot of attention to detail. And I find a lot of deaf children we work with are the same way. And so they like a lot of structure. And I was actually thinking about it the other day that they'll make good quality assurance officers because they like to note things and they follow, they like order, consistency, and structure. So I don't think you should shy away from STEM. Should you encounter any challenges, we are here at Lugha Ishara, but you can always fall back on ASL where you do not find Kenya Sign Language related signs for STEM units, yeah, or subjects.
Okay, another question from Julie. how do you prepare parents psychologically before breaking the news for testing the child is deaf?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's that's a really good question. Yeah, thank you. So we have, in our program, we'll have what we call extended counseling. Extended counseling is what we'll do between, once you have your child is screened as a newborn and you get a refer meaning that you're supposed to go and check again, then you come for an extended counseling session where we just provide you with information on what may happen, what the results may say, and what that means. But then the actual diagnosis is given by an audiologist, and audiologists are trained on how to deliver the news to the parents.
Okay, excellent. Another question from Milka. Milka, many organizations or companies do not give priority to hiring the deaf. How can we address this?
One, it's, well, I wouldn't like to give a solution that is just one-sided and I say that we need to take to the streets and to demand for these companies to just hire. We don't want tokenism. By tokenism, I mean just hiring a deaf person and not giving them a job where their career has no growth opportunities. That's not what we want, because if you demand and bulldoze that into companies, then companies will set up policies where they just hire a deaf person with no possibilities for growth for that person. But one thing I'd like to do is to understand then why these companies do not hire deaf or hard of hearing people. And a lot of the times you'll find it's because, one, of the assumption that deaf and hard of hearing people are of lower intelligence, which is a myth that has been busted over and over again. And secondly, language. So that's why we have our inclusion clubs, which are corporate for based. It's a product developed for corporates who want to be inclusive in their work environment. So language is the basis of deaf inclusion, learning sign language. So I'll really encourage, first of all, to just leave their cocoon of, that deaf, where they have this belief that deaf and hard of hearing people are of lower intelligence. Leave that behind. That myth has been busted and is gone, is dead and gone, really. So leave that cocoon and then just adopt a culture of inclusion by learning sign language. And then it will be you will realize that they, like I said, they are unless there's a condition affecting a deaf child or a deaf person, they are of typical cognitive skills, just like you and I.
Great. We have another question from Ms. Betty Kimani. Also, we want to recognize Ms. Betty Kimani, who is the director of the school where Catherine's son goes to, Marion Schools. And she has another question. We have a deaf teacher in our school. What's the impact of this to a deaf child?
Excellent question. Excellent question. One impact that deaf mentors, which will also be a part of HBCC, is working with deaf mentors or deaf and hard of hearing teachers. At Lugha Ishara, in fact, our teachers are usually deaf teachers because there's a connection that a deaf child and a deaf teacher have that I, as a hearing person, cannot get to. And so they have this unique connection. I don't know whether it's just understanding that we are the same, or I don't know where that comes from, but there's a connection that just seeing somebody who is grown or who has gone before you, who's older than you. I remember one child, we asked what is their impact of being in Lugha Ishara, and they said is that they realized, for one, that there are other deaf children and that grown-ups can be deaf too. So that is one of the greatest impacts that we have with working with deaf mentors.
Okay, Nelius, you had something to say to Ms. Milka. Please share.
I think I put it down. Is it the comment that I put?
Palette Cafe.
Yes. So I've been to Palette Cafe, and initially I actually didn't go there knowing that they support, that all the support staff are deaf. So we had a bit of I'm just like, okay, why do you seem like you're not understanding me? And then it dawned on me what was happening, and it was just amazing to be served by it. So all their staff are deaf, and that is what the cafe is about. So probably it's just supporting such initiatives. I think with regards to what Milka was asking on how we can promote inclusivity in the workplaces, and then maybe just in our different workplaces, seeing how we can support people who have these various physical disabilities. And as Catherine said, I think it's important to say, what did you call it? Token, not token, please. Yes, and avoiding tokenism, because we also want to support them to thrive in the areas that they are in. So it's just identifying. I work with children, I work with small children, and sometimes I see various mostly cognitive disabilities before the parents can see them. But you pick on the strengths of this child, and this is what you tell the parent the child is strong on. So that, I think, would apply to deaf children as well. It's just picking on that and then taking those strengths and supporting them with that. I think there's also a car wash somewhere in Ngara, I think, that's done by autistic kids. I'm not sure where, but there's someone running a car wash. So it's just such initiatives that we'd do to support these children, and even as they're growing into adulthood, and to show them that they can grow and they can thrive. And I hope it can get to a point where they can actually get to do secondary school, like secondary, upper, whatever, with the new system, and get into university. I feel like that is really important. Then they can get to pursue whatever they'd want to pursue. Thank you, Catherine, for very informative.
Thank you, Nelias, also for your share of the session. Catherine, there are lots of comments about what you're doing. You can read them on the chat. Now we have to end our podcast. Thank you very much, Catherine, for the informative presentation. I know that all of us have learned so much about Lugha Ishara and about deaf inclusion. Thank you again for answering the questions and for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us. And this concludes our podcast. Thank you all for attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this presentation. We appreciate all of you being here with us today. We encourage you to connect with us on social media at Kurasa Africa on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Hashtag Kurasa WAAW, hashtag Kenya Reimagine ED. If you have additional questions, you can send them to +254 700 200 000 or community@kurasa.org. You can even get in touch with Catherine. You can share your details on the chat feature. Thank you again for joining us today. We'll see you all next time round. Thank you for the wonderful session, Catherine.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to have a part 2. There were lots of questions, and I'm sure everyone learned something new today.
Okay, thank you guys for joining and for your time. I go by the same names on social media, so you can reach out from on there, or you can search Lugha Ishara on social media as well. Like and follow. You can and reach us or connect with us through the socials. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. And thank you, Miss Betty Kimani, for being with us today. Lugha Ishara, you're doing a great job for the community and the whole society. Amazing work.
Thank you.
Thank you.